Hi, I'm Elmo. I'm really high on cold medicine. Welcome to episode 6 of Heavy Storms.
I'm Tricky Rick!
I'm Elmo. I'm joined today by Tricky Rick and Danni.
I'm sorry I had to do it because I was so scared Elmo was gonna make the joke. I'm sorry. That was the worst thing I've ever done.
Good start.
Now you hang on. I need to turn this word and make it into a game and put it on Steam. Surely that won't get me sued.
So, on this episode of Heavy Storms, by the way, we got a new Heavy Storms tagline. You're Anna making me crazy. Yeah.
I've been sick with stomach flu for an entire week, and I have been just busy catching up with schoolwork. And I imagine things have been busy for everyone else in one way or another, so apologies if I don't have many games to talk about this time.
It's okay, I've been playing lots of video games.
I had a job interview today, but I'm sick, so I stuffed myself with cold medicine. And I got the job, which is great, but now
Yay.
I'm like, woo, got the job, fantastic. Anyway, the Lisa series has recurring themes of extreme sexual abuse. Woohoo!
Yay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say content warning on this one.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about a lot of heavy shit with this.
Oh, God.
But anyways...
The most difficult thing about playing an anime game, you gotta play it from right to left.
That's manga, you idiot.
I know what prison school is. So, what have we all been playing lately? Danni!
Oh, starting off with me. When was the last time we recorded? It's been a while, hasn't it?
I have no idea.
Okay. I've picked up and played a few games since then because job I started a couple months ago has allowed me to start buying more video games, thankfully, and start buying my own video games for this podcast. But so I picked up a few games and played a few games. I've started playing Resident Evil 4 and which I won't talk much about because I think I'm probably maybe halfway through that game. I don't exactly want to know how far in I am yet.
Just describe the point you're at and I'll give you a summation.
Well, I don't really want to know, is the thing. I kind of just want to be like, oh, I think I might be done. Oh, there's 10 hours left. Or something.
Yeah, you can tell it was made by some of Capcom's best because it has that Okame effect of making you think, oh, it's almost over, and then 20 more hours of game happens.
Yeah, I honestly, like, I feel like I should be, like, maybe 3/4 of the way through the game, but then whenever I mention Resident Evil 4, everyone's like, oh, this area is really fun, and I'm like, oh, that's a whole area I haven't been to. Which I'm glad about, because it's a fun game. I'd like it to keep going. So that's fun. But aside from that, I picked up and played through Tekken 7, which I'm not a fighting game person, but I love that game. I don't have much insight I can give fighting game wise. It's just as someone who isn't FGC, has no interest in being FGC, I love that game. It has exactly what I want from fighting games, which is a cool roster and just a lot of dumb personality and amazing presentation.
I also heard there's actually things to do in that one, unlike 4 or 6.
Tekken Bowl.
Well, okay, maybe not 6, but I mean good things to do, unlike 6.
I mostly just, like, mess around in Treasure Battle, just fighting endless enemies and gaining the customization items, but I've done it so much that all I'm getting is the in-game currency, instead of items because I've unlocked most of the common items you can unlock. So that's kind of a bummer, and I haven't played much recently. But it's a fun game to play against. I'm looking forward to the DLCs. Geese Howard's apparently coming out on the 30th.
Predictable.
So, predictable. And there's, of course, Noctis Sasuke coming next spring. Which I wanted Kiryu from Yakuza, but it's fine. It's still a fun pick. So that's fine. I don't have much to say about that other than it's a fun game. I like playing it. I bought and played through all of Danganronpa V3. That's the best Danganronpa game, hands down. That is a really, like, it improves a lot of the mini games that I hated. Honestly, all the trials are great. And I only got really frustrated at the logic in one of the trials, not because the logic I thought was bad, but just because the characters were really slow to pick up on it. Like, it was something I had figured out, like, before the trial even went in, and all the characters were like, what do you mean by this? And then we explain it, but they still don't get it, so we're on the same subject for like 10 minutes, and that got kind of annoying. But that was, like, the only one.
I hate it when that happens in Ace Attorney.
Aside from something in the first trial where it's, like, where you have to answer a question based on what the character would think, but I'm already a step ahead of the character, and I know that the character I'm playing as is wrong in what they think. That part was frustrating. But these are, like, minor things. They improve. Like, they have the best cases in any Danganronpa game. They have the best... I don't know if I prefer this cast to the Super Danganronpa 2 cast, just because the Super Danganronpa 2 cast is really strong. But this is also a strong cast. I don't like any characters as much as I love Sionji, my little shit daughter, but it has a lot of good characters. And
do you mind if I raise a thought real quick?
Go ahead.
I find it odd that this third Danganronpa game came out the same time that Rand Paul was beat up by his neighbor. Coincidence? I think not.
I hope it happens every time. But yeah, I kind of wish I could talk about what makes it, like, really good, but it's still a new game, and spoilers, because
all I've been hearing is that it puts the fandom on full blast constantly.
It does. And, like, when I got to the point in the ending, I'm like, okay, this is, like, I don't see why the fandom would get so pissed off at this. But then it just keeps going, and I'm like, oh, that's why. You enjoy the killing, don't you, Snake? Like, it kind of starts off that way without getting into spoilers, but then it just veers off in a whole other direction. And the ending is really clearly Team Danganronpa going, we don't want to keep making Danganronpa. Please, let us make another game. And then there's this little bit tacked on at the end that really feels like Spike Chunsoft going, no, you're gonna make another Danganronpa game. You have to. And sure enough, they're apparently hiring for another Danganronpa game, which sucks. And I don't think I'm gonna buy any more Danganronpa games, because this one was great. It was a great finale. This is where the series should end.
It's your all this is reminding me of Deponia Doomsday, and I'm just imagining if they just announced another fucking Deponia game after, like, 10 hours of telling the fandom to go fuck itself.
And you know how, like, Danganronpa 3, the anime, is terrible, and how so much of, like, the lore in Danganronpa is stupid? This, like, it doesn't, like, it retcons it all without retconning it, really. And I can't talk about that without getting into spoilers, and it's the best kind of retcon. It's my favorite kind of retcon.
Oh, don't worry. I'll go on TV Tropes in like a few days and spoil it all myself.
I just bought the first Danganronpa, and I haven't played anything. And I might get the third.
So this is it's a very good game. A very good. It's the best Danganronpa game. It's where Danganronpa should end. And oh yeah, I also bought myself a Switch and played through Mario Odyssey, and that's a really fun Mario game. End of story.
Hooray!
Like,
hey, I'm walking here.
I'm trying to keep it brief from all the games I played, but also that's a really fun game.
What if the real people, instead of saying sim talks, instead only said, "Hey, I'm walking here"?
Hey, I'm walking here. I think
just
it's
got to be like a Waluigi
that's
kind
in the
of
game
voice
somewhere. I can't remember where, but I think it's in the game somewhere. But yeah, it's the best Mario game for me. Just kind of like Breath of the Wild is the best Zelda game for me. They're like series I never got really into, but these like latest iterations are just really good. And it's Super Mario Odyssey is probably like hit my top 3 of the year. I think it knocked Yakuza down a peg because it's just a really fun game. And it was definitely worth buying a Switch, I think. But
I'll go ahead and share mine if no one minds.
Yeah. That's pretty much it for me. I don't think I'm forgetting anything.
Okay, first off, I want to say I started Stardew Valley after owning it for like over a year because I just sort of got the itch and was curious. I'm not a big fan of Harvest Moon games because whenever I've tried them, I've instantly just lost all interest within like the first hour. But I'm not getting that effect with Stardew Valley. It's like, it's a good game to mellow out to, especially if you focus on fishing. It's cute. There's some surprisingly fucked up shit in there that I appreciate just hidden there for those looking for it. I understand why this game is made all the money in the world now. It was like the highest selling game on the Switch until Mario Odyssey came out, and that's still hilarious to me.
I've never played a Harvest Moon game or Story of Seasons, and I'm wondering if I should pull the plug or pull the trigger more accurately on Stardew Valley on Switch.
Yeah, I'd say give it a shot. It's a little overwhelming at first because they don't explain very simple things you need to understand, but just like go pop on the wiki for a moment and read up some stuff, and then you should be able to get the hang of it pretty easily. Oh, but as far as the starting farm, do not pick the last one because that just spawns a lot of monsters and you're not ready for it. Just go for like the forest house or the river house.
Is the PC version superior for the mods?
Yeah, I would say so because that's the PC version and that's where you'll actually find mods.
The mods are that good?
There's a lot of mods for it, I know that. I haven't really checked them out yet, but this is like one of the highest selling games ever made at this point, so I imagine there's some good mods. That is the only genuinely good game I have played lately. I wanted to play more of Doki Doki Literature Club because I still have an article to write, but the whole sickness and schoolwork thing has not left me in the mood for it. Yeah. So instead, I have been playing garbage. Just today, I found out that there's 3 horny mahjong games on Google Play I didn't know about before. I've downloaded all of them, and I'm happy to report that 2 of them are just new versions of those Pretty Girl Mahjong solitaire games on Steam. And it's a surprisingly good port. But other than those, there's just been 2 games that I've checked out lately. The first one is Crush Crush, which is basically horny cookie clicker. And I kind of hate it because I realized too late that the devs of this game are... Oh, I should mention that the dev studio is called Sad Panda Studios. Yeah, it's that kind of humor. I unfortunately found out too late that these people are friends with Yandere Dev.
How do I get past this logo screen in Crush Crush?
But it's bad, and I want to stop playing it, but unfortunately it is an idle clicker game, so I can't.
Yep.
I do appreciate some of those things they put in there, like the way it works is you as you keep leveling up jobs and hobbies and unlocking more girls a day, you eventually get to the later set of girls who are just all really bizarre, like the one that is literally a bear. Just literally a bear. Wearing like a bow bonnet on its head.
Oh, I love Tekken 7.
And like putting on lipstick, and it talks in all caps. Literally a bear.
I love Tekken 7.
The game is filled with weird stuff like that. And it's just like, it's terrible humor, but you know what? It's so stupid, I'll give it a pass. The other one I played, though, is unfortunately a very bad game. I mean, like, it looks good on the surface, but if you go on the Steam page, you'll notice that all the feedback is overwhelmingly negative. And there's a reason for that. It is a game called Sinful Eden. It has this great, stupid premise about this island where men who, once they reach 21 and aren't married, get sacrificed to, like, a woman god or something. And it's very stupid. It has a beautiful, this beautiful aesthetic, and there's nothing to do in it. I've never seen this before. Like, they forgot to put in 85% of the game. It's astounding. Like, the idea is you're supposed to meet these 4 or 5 women, gain their affection and then choose one as a wife at the end, and while gaining money and reputation to do that. The problem is, you can only gain reputation outside of your job that you can only do once a week on the ridiculously long days this game plays out in. And the kicker is, the only 2 ways to make reputation are, 1, a slide puzzle that only has 1 image the entire game, and a never-changing breakout clone with terrible physics where you have to hit the ball so it hits the panties. And that sounds amusing at first, and it is, until you realize that the majority of the game, in order to get anywhere, is playing that game over and over and over for no reason other than to just earn money and reputation, and it's terrible. It's just shocking. They forgot to put the game in the game. They set up a fucking point and click, like, dating sim thing, and there's nothing to do. I've never seen this before. Like, we joke about, like, AAA games not having much content these days and, like, packing it off in DLC, but, like, they literally forgot to put in the game. It's just mind-boggling.
Okay, we're almost done with the alpha. When is the deadline for the alpha? Oh, the game released yesterday. Okay.
Oh no, it's not even like that, because the game looks beautiful. Like, it's just like covered in polish. It's like one of the best looking games I've seen on Steam from like a small developer ever, and there's nothing to do in it. They literally just made all these beautiful assets, this amusing dialogue, this good music, and just forgot to put in things to do. I mean, and that panty hitting game, here's the kicker. That was an update they made later when people complained that there was no way to get reputation. I'm not joking. It's just like, how does that happen? It's just... And there's no excuse for this. There are so many horny games on Steam now that are like actual games and surprisingly fun. Like, there's one with the terrible title of Deep Space Waifu, and it's genuinely good. It's like a well-designed shump of where you just like shoot off the clothes of the girls while a bunch of robots are around the screen, and it has like a really cool like 80s vaporwave aesthetic. But then you get to this, and it's just like, where are the video games? Where's the video game? Just like, it's an empty room with a pretty carpet. Fucking hell. I'm done.
I think I might be stuck in a bit of a rut, because I've mainly been Binding of Isaac and Roller Coaster Tycoon again. But
of course.
I'm glad that you both mentioned like Danganronpa and Harvest Moon, because at least I have like some things to say about that. I tried to get into Harvest Moon once with the GameCube one. It's a Wonderful Life. I'm sorry. I ruined Harvest Moon for myself forever because I'd had an argument with my sister, and one of the first things you do in It's a Wonderful Life is name a cow. So, had an argument with my sister, coming up with a name for a cow. Yeah. So yeah, I don't... can somebody quickly improvise like a girl's name? Because I don't want to actually use my real sister's name.
Pickle Rick.
Okay, Ricula. No, that doesn't sound right. Rick S? You know what, I'm just gonna have a bunch
If
of
you don't get this joke, you're just not smart enough to understand it.
I'm gonna say Mary Jane just because I'm looking at a Spider-Man comic.
Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna go to McDonald's and jump on the counter.
Where's my
until they give me my terrible special Asian ketchup.
But yeah, I named the cow after my sister, and then like 15 minutes after playing the game, it was like, whoa, your sister's name looks like she's ready to be milked. And I was like, I'm never going to play this again. I'm just turn off the game, stop watching Game of Thrones, stop watching... Oh. The Danganronpa thing kind of pales in comparison to incest, but...
I think I read that doujin last week.
Man, when you think about it, a lot of things pale in comparison to incest, which I guess is why Young Sheldon has gotten so popular.
Wait, what?
So I was... Ace Attorney was... This is when you said about how in Danganronpa sometimes you figure stuff out before the characters. I swear this has happened 3 times, but I can only specifically remember twice. In like Apollo Justice and in the Miles Edgeworth Investigations one. Twice.
Of course, it's the 2 games after the initial perfect trilogy.
Yeah. But there's 2 crimes where you're outside a room and you hear a very loud noise, and then you run into the room and it's like, oh my god, there's a corpse here. Somebody must have killed them. And it must have happened just now. And in both of these cases, right at the beginning, you're looking around and it's like, oh hey, look, somebody left like a firecracker here or something. Oh well, I have no idea what this could have possibly been used for, but what we do know is that because of that loud noise, we know they must have been killed just now. And they definitely weren't killed half an hour ago. And then somebody made a noise. Maybe with some kind of firecracker-like device. That couldn't have happened. It was definitely they died just now.
See, it's the opposite in Danganronpa, where there'll be a huge noise, like someone, like not literally, but basically someone hears a gunshot, and they're like, I wonder what that is. Time to go back to bed. Next day, someone's dead. When did that happen? And you're talking to everyone like, I didn't hear anything. There was a weird noise that woke me up when I was asleep, but that's it. Weird noise has been logged into your truth bullets. Get to the trial. I didn't hear anything. Objection! You heard a loud noise. Maybe that was them getting shot. What?
And it's worse because there's like a 3-hour gap between finding that one piece of evidence and going like, it was this! It was obviously this! And it's always... Like, the Apollo Justice one, I just remember it being like, you go through like 3 different lines of questioning where you're like, man, this would really help overturn the verdict if only he hadn't been killed at that specific time when we heard the noise. And, oh... So anyway, oh god,
there's
I was
just
no, you go.
Sorry, there's just in the Danganronpa V3 demo, which is non-canon and a completely different thing, is like it's like the dumbest it's ever been, because someone is stabbed and like there's a small time period given for it, and like there's a knife covered in blood in the room, and it's like, oh, this came from the kitchen, and like, in the time frame, there were people in the dining room, which is the only way you can get to the kitchen. And you talk to them, and one's like, yeah, someone came in and went to the kitchen. One person did, while I was here. Oh, well, that must be the murderer, because that's the only time they could have gotten a knife. Who was it? I wasn't paying attention. And that's it. It's like, okay.
Oh boy. I did play a genuinely new thing. I'm gonna be really quick. Lost Winds. It's a really good kind of game for me because it's the kind of game that you can finish completely in 3 hours. It's very cute and very charming. It has these nice graphics. You unlock these wind powers and use them to fly around this little platforming world and fight a boss and unlock things. I don't know. It's good, and I want to really recommend it because I did have a lot of fun, but at the same time I had fun because I got it on sale. And again, it's like 3 hours. And it's currently like $3, and $1 per hour is a good deal. But that's on sale, and it's currently like 75% off. So put it on your wish list and wait for it to go on sale again. So, Lisa. So we're going to be covering Lisa the First, Lisa the Painful, and Lisa the Joyful. And to kick things off, we're going to talk about Lisa the First, which means I'm immediately going to defer to Dark and ask him to talk about a completely different game. Dark, what do you know about Yume Nikki?
Sorry, I thought I had a burp.
Is that the anime about the guy with the cell phone and the yandere?
I thought that was Prison. What the fuck? Stop trying to burp.
Getting real in character for Lisa.
Sorry. Yume Nikki is a RPG Maker game where a woman who's scared to go outside goes and travels throughout her dreams, and there's a penis monster there, but you will almost never see it unless you will go on the internet for more than 5 seconds and are just assaulted with memes of it. and it's never said what actually the story of the game is, but you can make out pretty clearly from like a lot of pretty obvious imagery that she like saw some sort of wreck or something, and if you actually do the thing the game wants you to do and find like all of the things in the dream, then she'll wake up and jump off a roof. Yume Nikki.
Kind of fitting that it's like Lisa ended up being a fan game of that. So Lisa the First, it's a lot lighter and funnier. There's some really hilarious moments in there. Oh, it's a breeze. If you ever just want to play a happy game about happy people, go for Lisa the First. It's horrible.
So I was looking forward to this podcast, to recording, because I was like, wow, I can, like, this is like the game I've enjoyed the most out of any of them. Like, I love this game. I can't wait to talk positively about the game. Oh yeah, we're talking about the Lisa the First. Never mind.
To be fair, this was just a free game a guy made because he had a talk with his ex-girlfriend about some abuse she went through, and he started thinking about how what happens to us in life affects us as people, and also like Yume Nikki. So he's like, hey, what if I made a game like that? And then he did, and he admits it's not very good.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, oh yeah, the person behind the series is named Austin Jorgensen, and Lisa the First is strange because it's not really a good example of the series, but it's kind of necessary to understand a lot of what happens in the rest of the series.
I genuinely did enjoy playing it a bit. I didn't find the experience too
Spiders.
bad. The spiders are a bit easier to get past than some YouTube videos would have you believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the whole, it's not necessary to play this to enjoy the Lisa series, but it is a good...
The basic summary of the game is, it's like if Yume Nikki had a structure, which in some cases kind of robs it of like some like Yume Nikki's dreamlike atmosphere, but on the other hand, it makes every single character either Marty or Tricky Rick, I say in air quotes, and it's telling this very darkly comedic story of these horrible things through imagery and very, very strange dialogue that doesn't seem to make sense in context until you start thinking about it for a bit. The structure doesn't really work because the puzzles don't make sense and are just seem to be there because he's like, okay, I need to have game-like things here.
Yeah, a lot of that game just feels like I have to inject gameplay somewhere to make this game.
Yeah, except for the part where you climb the rope and the game flips you off.
That's the best part of the game.
But basically, did you know this game has an inventory?
Yep.
I didn't know that until I was almost done with it. But yeah, basically you travel through different doors in Lisa's headscape, and you start to piece together that her father, Marty, was somehow kind of broken by the loss of his wife. There's like imagery of crosses and one single memory where he was nice to her before things got clearly very terrible. And at some point he started sexually abusing her and physically abusing her. And no matter which of the two endings of the game you get, the regular one and the one where you find the tape to try to get a memory of her mother, but then it just turns into another Marty, things don't end well.
Yeah, there's going to be some great jokes in this episode.
It's very pointed in its and graphic. These games are graphic without actually showing any any of the events that take place.
It's all about disgusting imagery, like the entire world made of burnt people and vomit,
Mm-hmm.
or the giant Marty, just the big oozing blob.
One of the things
to enter into.
Oh god,
Yeah.
One of the things that we are going to be talking about in like Lisa the Painful and Lisa the Joyful is how the game's managed to find some kind of balance between being overwhelmingly depressing but also kind of outrageously
Hilarious.
funny in parts. Lisa the First doesn't really have that many funny bits, and
Yeah.
I don't have a joke set up about this. The character Tricky Rick, just completely serious description. Tricky Rick is a recurring character who is supposed to be a representation of Marty's penis.
I'm a tricky Morty. I turn myself into a tricky.
Yeah, and
The penis man
never
is
goes
going to
away.
take our children's
Yeah.
dreams.
It's like I can see that he was trying for like provocative, thought-provoking design choice, and what it came out as is a really shit South Park joke. Let me rephrase that. What it came out as is a completely run-of-the-mill, average South Park joke.
But honestly, I would say this game is comedic in a very, very dark way. Like, the other two games have a balance between what's supposed to be dramatic and what's supposed to be comedic. But this game just, like, shoves those two in a blender and tells you to sort it out.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's, like, a lot of, like, amusement you can get from just how benign a lot of the Martys are. Like, most of them aren't even that aggressive or dangerous or anything. They're just like, here's Marty on a raft in a river. He wants a banana. Here's Marty in the bathroom. He's using the bathroom. And it's just, like the things that come out of like Tricky Rick's mouth aren't so much threatening in like intent. Like, in the intent is supposed to be like making them threatening and make them a joke. So it's like tone is all over the place.
Yeah, it's a very it's to put it nicely, it's a rough game.
Yeah, it's definitely
of
the
ways.
sort of thing you see on. It's the sort of thing you see nowadays on itch.io, just hanging on the store saying like demo or something.
Like it doesn't have good level design. There's a lot of wasted space, I think, and just gameplay injected where it doesn't need to be. And the point where this was the only of the three games we're going to talk about that I didn't finish, because I got to the second Marty Spider section and I
Yes, the random spider.
and I just completely made the puzzle unsolvable because of the rock puzzles, like the rock pushing. I got to the very end of it, but I pushed the rocks in such a way where it was literally impossible to get through without starting over. And at that point I didn't want to start over at all, because getting there had been so frustrating and anger inducing, because those parts of the game are terrible. And so I just looked at the wiki and read the rest of the walkthrough for it to see what happens, and I was pretty close to the end.
Yeah, I just used the walkthrough the whole time, but I honestly did not discover there was an inventory screen until I was near the end.
I don't regret playing it, but I don't regret playing it as part of the Lisa trilogy. If it had been like a standalone game, I would just be thinking, what is this?
It gives good context for the other games.
And it's pretty suitable that it came out as a Yume Nikki fan game, because not to just outright explain the themes, but I guess they both have the message of that they're both stories of young girls trying to escape into kind of their dreams to escape traumatic events that have happened to them. But if an event has been that traumatic, it's going to have a lasting effect on you, and it's just going to follow you in there.
Overall, though, I think it would have just been better if, maybe not as a gameplay part, but as like story bits, maybe cutscenes or notes you find or flashbacks, just put something in Lisa that basically sums up Lisa the First.
I think that would have kind of robbed the painful and joyful of their perspective, because a major part of both games is that you're seeing things entirely from the perspective of the character you're controlling, either Brad or Buddy. If you interjected Lisa prologue stuff, that you would learn too much about Lisa and would kind of rob the magic of seeing more of these two characters from their perspective and how they see things.
Well, like, for the painful, yes, but joyful splits perspective between the different characters. You're mostly in Buddy's, but it does show you things that Buddy...
Yeah, but it doesn't do it that often. It's mainly just to set up some stuff with Rando, and that's about it.
I think you could have done something similar in, like, Painful, though.
Speaking of Lisa the Painful, it's probably about time we get to the second game. And probably the main one in the franchise. This is the bread and butter. Lisa the First is a game about trying to escape abuse, and Lisa the Painful is a game about someone who has escaped abuse, but is living with the memories and the consequences. And much like Lisa the First, it's a light-hearted, upbeat romp through child abuse, drug addiction, hints of sexual abuse, and there's even some black comedy rape thrown in.
I think I would describe Painful as a game about the cycle of abuse.
Yeah, I actually did a big full course article on all three games, and a major thing I noticed about it is, since I had just done Alan Wake before it, I already had my mind just kind of going in circles on the concept of determinism, and then this comes and it's directly about that. Yeah, for those who don't remember my earlier ramblings, the idea of determinism is that we do not have free will, but who we are and what we do is affected by what is done to us and what we experience in life. And the Lisa games are very much about exploring this and how much free will we actually have. In particular, it shows this by exploring characters who have all suffered serious trauma or abuse and how they come to terms with it. Or rather, how they don't come to terms with it and go on murder quest.
It's also about the fragility of masculinity.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely a major part of this.
There's also a guy who can't drive a bulldozer.
Because if you're not familiar with this series or what it's about, Lisa the Painful is about it's a post-apocalyptic story where all the women in the world have died or disappeared. Something, it's never quite explained. I have my own theory on what happened.
The game kind of does explain it in one throwaway line that Buzzo gives when he mentions a shelter, but that's about all you get. And I'll go more into it when we get deep into spoilers.
The inciting incident of the game is the main character, Brad, finds a baby in this world where it is impossible for children to be born. Kind of like Children of Men, but instead of no one having babies, there's no women to have babies. Get this out of the way, it's pretty lenient on the idea of cisnormative gender. So just gonna get that out of the way for this discussion and put that behind us.
Yeah, like there's a later party member you can get who runs I'm not sure what to call it. Oh yeah, there's about the only group of people who seems to be genuinely thriving in a somewhat healthy way in this land are like queer communities. Like we have that one person. It's never really explained if they're a drag queen or trans or what, but they're definitely not cis.
Yeah, drag queens and gay sex workers have their own little community that's actually handled pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
Which is one of the most things that surprised me the most about this game when I first played it about a year or two ago. But yeah, the main character Brad finds a baby, and not only that, it's a baby girl.
He takes it to his 3 best childhood friends who you meet in like the opening scene where they get beat up by bullies, and then Brad gets home and gets a beer bottle thrown at him by his dad, Marty. And the 3 friends are, let's see, Rick, Sticks, and Cheeks, I think. And they basically become the uncles to this kid, though Rick is the first one to realize, hey, maybe we should take the only baby that has ever existed in years to the heavily fortified to the man like leading the heavily fortified army and like keep her safe. And then Brad's like, no, my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your first hint that things aren't going to end well in this game.
Yes, it results in Brad, who thinks of who he names the baby Buddy, thinks of Buddy as a daughter and wants to protect her because he, knowing the situation, knows that if she ventures out into the world on her own, she will be torn up, spit out, and turned into a sex slave meant to repopulate the human race at the best of intentions and at the worst of intentions to just be a sex slave because men are terrible.
Yeah, that is a constant running theme through this game.
And so it results in people who do fall into both of those factions. They want to ensure that the human race does not die out by using Buddy. And some also just want to
are assholes.
Buddy. Yeah.
And if you're wondering what the connection is between this and Lisa the First, it's because Brad Armstrong, son of Marty Armstrong, he escaped the abuse of Marty, but in doing so he had to leave behind his little sister Lisa, who later killed herself. So that's why he's so, let's say, dedicated.
He has a lot of visions of Lisa looking over him throughout the game, and they're not like big showy ones all the time. Sometimes they're just like Lisa is just in a small part of the area, and if you leave and come back, she's not there anymore. Or sometimes near the end of the game, when you go to the campfire to rest, there's just 12 of them looking down at you.
Always in unreachable areas and unable to interact with. Out of reach, you might say.
Brad's also suffering from an addiction to a drug that permeates the wastelands called Joy, which is being distributed by a man named Buzzo, who seems to know Brad and has a very unhealthy obsession with him and appears throughout the game to force you to make difficult decisions, usually being, give me all of your stuff, give me your arm, or give me one of your party members.
Or give me your daughter's nipple.
That too. And what I like about the game is that this isn't like a BioWare RPG where you get to make the right choice or find a third way sometimes. If you try doing a third choice with Buzzo where you confront him and ask him why he's doing this, he just takes all your shit and your other arm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, don't do that.
Yep.
This is not that sort of game. This is not a game you play to feel good.
It's not a fair game, you might say.
Oh yeah, pain mode is a nightmare.
This game is designed to just screw you over at so many points. It's
like even the act of healing, like in a normal game, if you go to like a healing spot on the map and do a rest, you just get healed and get to continue on. In this game, there are ends, but you have to spend magazines to use them, and there aren't very many, so your other choice for a full party heal is to use a fireplace found around And all of them, if you stop at any of them, there's a very high chance when you wake up, something bad is going to happen.
Yes.
When your party members can get kidnapped and you have to go rescue them, some of your items might be stolen, you might get poisoned, and there's not very many items in the game that can heal that. You may get attacked by someone, or sometimes it may just be a random, non-threatening event, like just a guy in a creepy mask looking at you and slowly backing away without moving his feet.
And sometimes, party members can just straight up abandon you. Like, they'll leave while you're sleeping, and there's apparently some kind of a invisible morality system where if you decide to, like, if party members end up dying, because there are a lot of people in this game that can perma-kill your party members. If your party members die, if you decide to sacrifice them instead of your arm, or for whatever reason, party members will become more likely to just abandon you throughout the game. It's punishing.
It's interesting because once the party members join your party, they don't really have anything to do in the narrative. But you still want them there because they're a massive help and you absolutely need them to get through all the shit you have to deal with throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much the same like items and stuff. The game constantly taking these things away from you is meant to stress you out because you need the things to do the thing in a mechanical sense, and then that adds up to getting you to feel things from Brad's perspective, and then makes you emotionally invested in all these things and characters on some level.
Yeah, I'm generally not a fan of games being unfair or purposefully making things extremely hard to complete or get through to kind of prove a point. I'm generally not a fan of that just because I don't think it's usually used well. I think it's very, like, a great fit for this game.
Yeah, it was one of the few games that's trying to piss me off where I was like, okay, I see where you're going with this. Mm-hmm. It's like one of the few times it actually made sense that wasn't yet another office simulator.
Oh, also, we mentioned Brad is a drug addict, this drug called Joy. And at random periods throughout the game, you will go into Joy withdrawal. And when that happens, most of your attacks do no damage unless you're incredibly overleveled, and then they start doing maybe 2 damage a hit, which is incredibly little. And if you sacrifice your arms, these withdrawals become more often because the pain makes you want it more. And taking Joy affects the ending. And taking Joy more often makes you go into withdrawal more.
Yeah, there are 2 different epilogues, I think. One you can get from beating the game without Joy, and one you can get by beating it in pain mode.
Oh, there's one you get for... There's one you get for beating it without pain mode and with taking Joy.
Oh, yeah, because the pain mode ending overrides the no Joy ending, so no matter if you use Joy in pain mode or not, you're going to get the pain mode epilogue.
Yeah, there's normal ending, joyless ending, and pain ending.
I want to say straight away that I really, really liked Lisa. I liked the trilogy. I really like this game, and it's great. But since I feel like I can count on you to both cover the things in the game that are great, I also... Most of my notes are basically just...
like how easy it is to jump off a cliff?
Yes. And like how it is really difficult to go through the game without using Joy, and if you do it, then... I mean, it does say it does genuinely affect things in the game, but it affects things like a 20-second screen of dialogue at the end, or one character who joins you if you haven't taken Joy, but doesn't join you if you have taken Joy, unless you take more than 2 Joy. For some reason the programming is wrong, so like I went through it on pain mode, which you really need to be taking Joy if you're doing pain mode, and Yeah, I went through and talked to him, and he was like, "You have the eyes of a man who has not taken joy. I will join your quest." And I was talking to him while on joy. So I was just like, "Yeah, sure, come right in." And then I gave him some joy, just to be like, "Ha ha! Now you're addicted to drugs."
We should mention that the game is still like an Earthbound-like in ways, but instead of going on a top-down perspective, it's a 2D perspective, sort of like a platformer, except you can't jump. You just drop from ledges, and how far you drop changes depending on if you're walking or using the bike item. And this is where a lot of the frustration comes in.
You eventually get to a point where whenever you're nearing the end of a cliff, you just have to stop and then just kind of edge like one block at a time.
Yeah, you never know when you're going to have a high drop. And sometimes you have to make those high drops to get good things or to continue on. Like if you do the bonus boss where you go to this island where Jim Sterling, the most entertaining man in video games, lives, he will start ordering you around and make you wear a dress and give you a trash cocktail and make you drink it, and then you go outside and talk to a giant blob of flesh that tells you to just hang in there, and then he tells you to like jump off a cliff, and you do, and you take a lot of damage, but it's the only way to continue the entire sequence, and then you fight him, and then you fight Jonathan Holmes, and he's the Grudge.
Wait, that was Jim Sterling?
That was Jim Sterling.
Oh.
Slave Master Jim.
I didn't know he was in this game. I knew the
two best friends are in this game.
Two best friends, and they kill an entire city.
Oh, and the secret super hard boss, Satan, that's a YouTube Let's Player.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the reason he's a trucker is because that used to be his job in real life.
Huh.
Yeah, they were apparently backers for the game, so they decided to put their characters in the game at some point.
It's weird. I never hear I watch their stuff all the time. I've never heard them talk about Lisa, like once. So it's weird seeing them in here.
Yeah, I remember Jim mentioned he was going to be in it in an article and did one short video of it where he was kind of perplexed with it, but that was about it.
Especially because the best friends have their own like literally an OC that whenever they are Kickstart backer, which is to put their OC in the game, they always put in their OC Zubaz, who is in Shovel Knight and in Dive Kick.
Yeah, he was an abandoned Capcom design, and they're just like, he's ours now. And that's actually part of his character in Dive Kick. He was like character designed so bad nobody wanted him.
I think the main way in which this game kind of invokes the memories of Earthbound is the combat, which
yes.
Yeah, when you encounter an enemy on the field, I should mention that all the enemies in this game have their own unique names, which really drives home that maybe you're doing something really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're all their own unique character with their own unique sprites, and except for like a few spawning things in a few areas, like the shadow creatures in the caves.
It's also a really good way of making sure that players don't ever get used to who they're fighting, because you just killed this guy with this name, but now you're fighting another guy, and who knows what he can do. Maybe he has a different attack, maybe he has status effects. What do you know?
And that's important because there's a lot of random characters who can do permakill moves, and you're never sure who they are. Like, if you piss off one guy you're giving a lap dance to in like the queer bar scene, he will fight you, and he is one of the strongest enemies in the game.
Yeah, it's talking about the game's flaws. As much as I appreciate like the joy system, it gets more annoying than I think it's worth sometimes.
I didn't mind it so much once I realized that it doesn't affect the attack power of the fireball.
See, but the time I went to, okay, this sucks, is when I was in a cutscene leading into a boss fight, and it activated within, like, during the cutscene. That was the time when I was just like, fuck.
I honestly didn't mind because there's a lot of characters you can get in this game who don't have joy withdrawal, who are really good, like Jack, the cute little magician guy. He is pure and good. He is my son. And once you figure out how you can use static effects well, and you can take advantage of that, and that will save you a lot of headaches. And also just max up Terry, and he becomes a god.
The status effects are really unique and interesting, and there's also way too many of them.
I don't understand what most of them do.
Most of them are useless. The ones you want to care about are like stuff like tripping, stunning, and oil.
The ones I relied on were tripping, burning, and bleed.
Yeah, oil and burning together isn't. There was one boss you have to face before the last area of the game. In pain mode, it's like some sort of monster thing, but in like the regular
Hawk Hollywood.
In the regular mode, it's that one pretty guy who just like stands still for an entire minute admiring his own beauty. And I thought he was going to be hard, but at that point I had Birdie, the drunk guy. He had high speed, so I had him oil the guy up, and then I had Terry do the hottest dance because he had it at that point, and then I won.
Yeah, there's a lot of game breakers. But a lot of the really useful status effects, like, they're good and they're interesting, but bleed and poison and burning, they all essentially do the same thing. It's all like, at the beginning of every turn this person will take extra damage, and if somebody is stunned or paralyzed or tripped or scared or asleep, that's all exactly the same thing. It means that they're not going to attack.
There actually is a subtle thing they're doing. The first thing they're doing is that they're giving you all these extra status effects to worry about because there's not many items to heal them, so you have to be careful with what you heal and when. But the other thing is that certain enemies have resistances to certain status effects, but you aren't really fully sure what they're resistant to, so you have to keep trying to figure out what it is and what can help you. Though I will say right now that almost everyone has no resistance to tripping.
Except Joy.
The only characters that had resistance to tripping were, I think, the beasts, and also just there are a few characters and bosses who just float. They levitate, and of course you can't trip them.
Something I appreciate about this game is there's just so much to do and so much to find and experience. Like, there's an entire village of fish people you can completely miss. And they're just like literal fish with legs. And there's one that's a lawyer who hates you, who becomes your lawyer after you steal a map. And the fish people are angry, and he's just constantly heckling the judge in English, telling him that you slept with his wife, no matter what you tell him to say. And then you get off scot-free anyways, because the fish people couldn't understand what that fish person was saying because none of them speak English. And then he joins your party.
Yeah.
And he wears a hat.
There's a lot in this game, a lot of branching paths, and not, like, hardly any direction where you need to go. And the difficulty curve, just between two different doorways right next to each other, can be massive.
That's what makes pain mode so painful. You never know what's going to step out and kill you if you make the wrong turn. And also, don't give the two best friends dynamite, you idiot.
I did it after I clicked that area. Because why not? They gave me 100 mags.
Recruit everyone first, then let
That's terrible.
Yeah, go through the area, do everything there, then get the 100 mags.
What's great is
I'm glad
don't go back to see what you've done.
there's so much random shit that can happen in this game that I appreciate. It gets especially bad once you hit the last major area before the final area. And like, normally at that point you're used to like the kidnapping event being like, okay, I gotta go give him the mags to get my guy back. But in that case, one of the gang members that captured your dude is like a cool gang of bikers on like a sunny hill. One of them will just suddenly turn into a joy mutant, kill your friend, and then you have to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So fuck you.
Oh, that's what they were for. I never slept at campfires because the first time I did it, somebody got kidnapped and I just reloaded a save. I just remember in the third area there was one path where if you go down there, there's just a bunch of bikers, but you can't go any further and you can't interact with them. And I'm like, oh, they would have kidnapped me. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Getting this out of the way, I played the first with a walkthrough, or at least what I played of the first I played with a walkthrough, because that game, you can get lost in it easily. This one, I played a walkthrough the whole way through, like an in-depth walkthrough, just so I could make sure like I saw everything and also knew what I was doing, because the very first time I loaded this game up after getting it like, years ago, I tried to play it and I was just getting demolished. I was like, I don't understand this game, and then put it away.
Yeah, it's not friendly to beginners. I like that it technically does give you all the rules and gives you fair warning first, and then just lets you fuck up instantly. Like, I like the first screen where you have control after you do the introduction fight and meet Terry, who joins your party, and then joins your party again later, and then joins your party for a third time again later. Mm-hmm. There's a rock on a cliff with a balloon on it, and it's stopping you from going over the cliff, and the game is telling you you can go over cliffs, and Terry even leaves it, and there's like even a little hint left that says, if this balloon wasn't here, you would have died. And then you walk across the screen, and if you do not stop once you cross the screen, there's a very good chance you'll accidentally kill yourself walking off a cliff.
Yeah, I had to play the prologue 3 times.
Cause that's great.
Because there's no save point before this, so you go through like a 5-minute prologue, then you jump off a cliff. Then I played it again, only this time I was mashing through all the dialogue, and Terry says, hey, do you want to play on pain mode? And I accidentally pressed yes. And I most definitely did not want to play on pain mode first. So, then I had to... You got me, Austin. You got
this
me.
game trolls so much. I like when it brings back that middle finger joke again, but it does it in the best way, where you're constantly climbing up the rope and this grand sweeping music is playing. You think something super important is going to happen. Nope, just the middle finger. And I should mention, Joyful brings that joke back again, but at that time, it knows you're expecting it, so you're going up the rope, and then you finally reach the top, and there's just a genuine thank you from the devs for playing these games, and then you notice there's another rope, and you climb up, and there it is.
Actually, it's different than that. You climb up this rope for a long time, and then you reach the top, and it's a platform leading to another screen. And you go there, and there's a big mountain you have to climb up. And so you climb up this whole mountain, and then you get to the top, and there's another platform leading to another screen. And from it, there's a note saying, like, with this heartfelt message from the devs about how they're so grateful they can make this game, that people would love it, and they've always wanted to just make something that connect their feelings with someone else. And it's like, thank you, signed DL for Dingaling, because Dingaling is the studio behind this game. And then you go over to the next screen, and it's just the middle finger.
The humor of these two games is just always like that. Like, remember that early part with the orphans, and the guy's like, "Don't play with that match," and then he tells you to put it out with the bucket of water, so you get the bucket next to him, and then it makes the fire giant, and he's like, "No, that was the gasoline bucket. I needed the water bucket," and it scrolls way high to a bucket on a cliff several feet away, like a mile away, and then you have to go get that water bucket, and all the kids are dead anyways. It's like, this is the second most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me.
I reloaded that save, like my save after that happened, to try and actually get the right water bucket and see what happens, and as soon as you walk past him, he stops you and is like, "What are you doing? Get the water bucket." And it just, like, every time you walk past him, so it's like, you can only get the gasoline bucket.
I want to know who was in your parties. Who were the 4? Well, obviously Brad being in them. Who were the other 3
At the end,
that you kind of used for?
I kept changing mine.
I'd say that you used for the most.
I
of it.
kept changing mine up based on what I felt like, but the ones I used the most were Birdie because of the oil, Jack because fire, and Terry because Terry.
see,
Yeah.
I really just prioritize damage output over anything. So, like, for most of the game, I went through with, who did I go through with? 'Cause
Anyone who
I
uses
kept
rage
picking-
is a chump.
I kept picking up party members who were, like, lower level than I need them to be.
Like
or-
that one guy you caught who was trying to poop and then a spider went up his butt.
Yeah, or I'd, like, been using the same characters for so long, they had been, they were high level. They were higher level than the ones I was getting, so I just stayed using those. But then I got to the wrestling area, which is the best grinding area in the game. And so I just leveled up everyone in my party. Up to their height where they get their last skill. And from there I was just like, okay, who do I want to work with now that I've put all of them on a level playing field. And so by the end of the game it was me, Jack, Farty is the one you get in your party. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Farty, and of course, and the best character, Shock Lord.
That's not Terry.
Terry died in Russian roulette.
That's a shame because he gets the single most damaging move in the entire game. I like the hottest dance is a game breaker. Just oil an enemy up, use the hottest dance, bam, you have won.
Oh yeah, we should mention, at some point in the game, not gonna say where, you just suddenly get kidnapped and taken to a Russian roulette ring, and you have to win 3 games to pass on. And you don't play, your party members play, and yes, it perma-kills them if they lose.
Just a heads up for that, there's a bit of a trick to it. It's not 100% foolproof, but it will help massively.
Don't
wait
click immediately.
Yeah, wait before you click. And when it's the enemy's turn, click as fast as you can, so there's a good chance they'll kill themselves.
But yeah.
Better trick, save scum like a man.
That too.
Yeah, I lost a lot of party members my first time, and I was just like, well, reload the save, and then I lost, like, I think 2. And I was like, this is fine.
I just saved scum constantly so I could get Buckethead. And it turns out he has joy withdrawal, and that apparently makes guns not work. And he wasn't that
I hate
good.
it when that happens.
Yep.
But he's a man with a bucket head, so that's pretty cool.
That does mean the fact that he has a bucket on his head means that any enemy that would permakill you by biting your head off doesn't work on him. It just knocks him out.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So yeah, there's a nice little touch.
I forgot about
The
that.
MVP in my party, for the most part, was actually Olin, the archer you meet, just because he has one of the most kind of boringly good moves in the game. Because he's an archer, and when you attack, he fires an arrow. And he has an attack named Rapid Arrow, where he fires 3 arrows.
I think he has the highest luck, too. So the highest chance of critical.
Yeah, so he gets crits, and it's just 3 regular attacks. Does a lot
He's
of
a good
damage.
character to put in any party, which is the opposite situation with Rage, who's just like Brad but sucks.
Yeah, Olin.
But as soon as you reach Area 2, well, I think as soon as you find a map to a place called Garbage Island, you can enter this kart racing thing against a guy named Fly, and once you have Fly, you're literally unbeatable.
I never used it. I never used him because I read ahead and knew that he hated you the entire time. I was like, I don't want to fight with a guy who hates me.
Yeah, Fly's a tick, but he has a special attack named Puke that just invokes 3 or 4 random status effects on an enemy, and with all the status effects in the game, it's pretty guaranteed that you'll get at least one that means, okay, now he can't attack you. Also, he's probably poisoned and bleeding or burnt or confused or something. And then when you level him up, he gets an attack named Super Puke, which makes 5 or 6 status effects go on any enemy. And since most of the Joy Mutants in the game, and the optional bosses, since most of them are fought one-on-one, it just becomes a ridiculously easy game where none of them can even land a hit.
It's usually wiser to just get Birdie to use his oil up move on an enemy and just pelt them with fire. Brad has a fireball, Jack has a good set of fire attacks, and Terry has the most game-breaking fire attack in existence.
Yeah, but then after you use those attacks, if they haven't died, they'll rip your head off.
When you have Terry's...
They can't rip your head off if they're,
When you have Terry's fire attack, and then you have pretty much won. Like, Satan is the only one who might pose a challenge in that department, but the rest of them you can actually kill before they get a killing move out.
I never had any of my party members get perma-killed in a battle. Thankfully, I just prioritized high damage output, and after I went through wrestling, I prioritized characters with high damage output who also had group attacks, like Farty's Truck Slam, which attacks all enemies. Shock Lords only attacks all enemies, and Jack had good directed attacks, but he also had juggle, like his juggling skills, which attacked all enemies and could cause burning, and so that's why I went with those.
I want to see if I can do a quick little quiz here, because there are 30 different party members, not counting Brad, in the game, and I just want to have a little contest where I'm just going to say the name of a character, and I want to see which one of you can guess who that person is first.
Okay.
You ready? Crisp.
Is that the guy who had the spider up his butt?
No.
Okay, I got that mixed up.
I don't know.
Okay, next one. Ollie.
Could you say that again?
Oh.
Ollie.
Was that the storyteller?
Nope, that was Nern. Garth.
Oh, that's the artist guy.
Yep, you got one. Sunny.
Could you say that again?
Sunny.
Is that the chicken guy?
Nope.
No, that guy's named Rooster, isn't he?
Yep. And I'll go for one more. Clint.
Oh, I know I used that guy. I'm trying to remember. I know there's a football guy late in the game that you don't have a reason to use, but I don't remember his name.
I'm really, really glad that you couldn't get some of these, because I was leading this into a point where I think there are too many party members, and a lot of them aren't developed at all.
I think a lot of that is so that you have expendable party members, since you can have a lot die.
Yeah, especially
Also, anyone who joined...
Especially in pain mode.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they're all there, because you need people in pain mode, and they're all going to die very quickly.
I'd say anyone who joins you in Area 3 or onwards is kind of useless, because by that point in the game, after Area 3, you've just got the end.
I mean, at that point, why would you want to get the swordsman guy by hostage-ing his gay boyfriend? That's just rude.
That was Crisp.
Oh, yeah.
Area 3 in the game is by far the most straightforward, because it's just you need to go down 4 different paths and get 4 items at the end of the 4 paths. And there's 4 different bosses, I think, at the end of all of them. And one of the bosses is this football guy named Buffalo Van Dyne, and he joins your party, and it's like... what? He was the last of the 4 bosses that I defeated. So it's like, I literally have nothing to do with you up until the ending, where your party members don't really play much of an impact. Oh, and also there was an art book that I think came either for Kickstarter backers or it might be...
Oh yeah, that's the one that mentions Terry used to be a cancer patient and he had to cheer himself up, so now he wants to cheer up everyone and make friends.
Yeah, some of the backstory in those character tidbits is like kind of interesting, and I liked it. But then there was others
Like
where...
the spider butt
like,
guy, they're just like, we just put him in here.
Yeah, the official description of the guy who was trying to go for a poop and a spider goes too near him. His official description is just, who cares? Which, on the one hand, is funny, but on the other hand, when it also wanted to give me backstory about the guy with a paper mache goose head who runs an inn and speaks in rhymes, and when it told me in the art book, hey, did you know that there used to be a serial killer, but they left clues for the police that were in rhyme, and the police just got confused and couldn't catch him.
To be honest, I kind of pegged him the moment I saw him as dangerous and not quite right. Like, that is a guy wearing a goose mask just rhyming shit in him. And I'm like, what the fuck is your deal? And plus all his attacks are like knife based, I think. So yeah, it makes sense, serial killer.
My reaction to that, it might just be because I didn't use geese at all, which is...
He's actually really good. He does a lot of solid damage.
Especially to animal type enemies.
Oh yeah, that's really useful at like one point in the game.
I guess it's just like I didn't care a lot about a lot of these characters' backstories. Like, Beastborn. He's a dude in a cave.
To be honest, you don't need to know that much about a lot of these guys since they're just like normal dudes doing their thing. And then Brad comes in and is like, I need to deal with my misplaced issues by forcing a child who clearly does not want to be in my care to come back into my care, and I'm going to beat you up and we're going to be friends.
Then I'm going to kill your squirrel after you join me.
Squirrel jerky. You can make Beastborn eat his squirrel friend.
We mentioned pain mode. I wrote down a list of literally every single difference that pain mode makes in the game, because that was something I did eventually go on to play the game in pain mode, just because I think I just had a Sunday free, and I just woke up at like 8 in the morning and went, I wonder if I could beat Lisa on pain mode, and then at 6 in the evening I went, yep. So, the big huge difference is that save points can only be used once.
And then the birds explode.
Yep, and this includes the guy halfway through the game who's dressed as a bird. And it also includes, accidentally, if you go to a save bird and go to save and then change your mind and come out of the save menu, it still explodes. And it's kind of thematic, I guess, for Lisa to have a mode where everything is a lot more difficult, but like I said, I've written down all the differences and it's 3 lines of text. Save points can only be used once. There's 1 or 2 enemies that are replaced with slightly more difficult enemies. There's a really difficult guy because between area 1 and 2 there's quite a tall guy named like Sweet Tea Rakim. He's quite a challenging fight early on in the game, and in pain mode there's 2 of him. And that becomes probably the hardest fight in the game because they both have 9,000 hit points and perma-kill moves. Like Dark said, Hawk Hollywood, who's one of the Area 3 bosses, he's turned into a Joy Mutant. And there's also another random Joy Mutant at the end of a cave in Area 3. But that's really... It's a few extra enemies, and yeah, you can still get Fly in pain mode. You can still get all of the overpowered combos, so... It was, wasn't bad. It just wasn't... Didn't really deserve to be a whole extra mode, really.
Yeah, I disagree because it's a dick of a challenge, and it puts a carrot in front of it. It's like, hey, if you beat this mode, you'll get a special ending that explains the mysteries of Lisa. And then a bunch of idiot nerds are like,
There's also another area you can explore only in pain mode.
Oh yeah, the joy.
And that's actually really important to the main plot of all of the entire series, which we'll get into in spoilers. Like, you can't you can't get into it in the regular mode, and you miss out on a very important plot point that explains a gaping plot hole.
It's nice that you do get that kind of reward from... I feel bad because like literally 2 minutes ago it was like, man, pain mode, more like Spain mode, because I don't like Spain, and this mode also sucks. I have nothing against Spain. Much respect, Spain. But yeah, if you make your way into the Joy Lab, at the end there's a note, and it does explain, yeah, the whole apocalypse thing. There's a large part of the explanation of that is hidden there, and if you do finish it on pain mode, you get the backstory of one very quite important character named Rando. But the problem is that without this Joy Lab, and without finding out who Rando is, you can go through the entire game without ever knowing why there was an apocalypse, or without knowing who this guy in a mask is and why he's so important.
Well, you better play pain mode to find out, nerds. Jingles keys. And they start running in the knives.
And like, there's so much game we can talk about. We can talk about Mario and Luigi, just watching a table dancer, or
the guy who's the guy who's terrible with the bulldozer.
Yeah, the guy who's terrible with the bulldozer. There's the
there's the bully characters.
The Sentai team.
Oh yeah, they even get their own little after. You can even see that
fall. Yeah, of the Salvation Rangers.
And one of them just joins you, the Pink Ranger, and he never wears his outfit, and he's like, "Screw you guys, I'm gonna go with this guy."
And he's terrible.
I only have one more like negative note, and that's just Buzzo is a piece of shit. And I don't mean in the piece of shit in that he's an intended piece of shit, but I mean that going back to the story, it's set up like almost a traditional Brad is a hero going to save this girl from a bad world that's gonna hurt her. And the more you play, the more it becomes kind of morally ambiguous, and actually Brad is doing some really questionable things. But then Buzzo comes along, and he's just... While it's a really interesting effect on the gameplay that he shows up and says things like, I will either sacrifice the first member in your party, or I'm gonna cut your arm off and you have to choose and there's no way around it. That's really interesting for the effect on gameplay, but the whole, man, Brad, he's really morally ambiguous. This Brad guy you're playing as, and I'm just like, I literally cut my arm off 20 minutes ago to save a guy that I met half an hour ago. Telling me that I'm just, ooh, there's a dark past behind him, and I'm like, I literally have no arms. I can't even sarcastically clap you because I have no arms.
I actually kind of like that, because even despite the good things the game does let you do, what you ultimately can't decide on doing, the thing that Brad absolutely has to do, is genuinely monstrous and terrible once you realize the full scope of it. And that doesn't negate. And
should we just go spoilers?
Hang on. I want to talk about the joyful mechanics and the basic concept of that before we really get into it.
Yeah.
I want to
running long as it is.
Yeah.
The idea behind Joyful is that it's a DLC campaign that explains the mysteries of the world, blah blah blah, that was promised by the Kickstarter. And it cast you as Buddy in this game, taking place right after the events of the Painful. And basically Buddy, after being dragged around by a bunch of sweaty, ugly men for the entire game, is just kind of sick of it and is just ready to murder all the strongest men in the world so she can be the strongest person and no one will ever try to hurt her again. And Rando, a very important character we'll explain more later, just goes just like, let's go do good things. No, let's do murders. Okay. And then he helps you do murders. And I really like a major change in Joyful is that you only get 2 characters throughout that entire campaign, and one of them you only have for like half of it. So most of the play in Joyful is trying to figure out how to master the timing mechanic that Buddy uses, and learning to make use of joy and all the whatever items you can get. And it should be a stressful experience because it's like structured a lot of the same way as Painful, except now it becomes really fun and exciting and in the moment because everything is much more simplified. You only have one character. There's the enemies in front of you. You got to figure out how to kill them efficiently and how to survive. And you can actually do that better mechanically by understanding that timing mechanic, and that makes all the difference, especially once you start using joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have to use joy.
In Joyful,
in Joyful.
There's no consequence to using joy.
It tells you straight up on like several walls in the game that they added after they released the DLC, because people kept thinking, oh, there must be another ending where you get when you don't use joy, and it just says in all capital letters, use joy.
Yeah, it heals you, and it does what it didn't in Painful, where using joy it extends your damage output. So it's like, plus it's the most bountiful health item in the game.
It also increases your defense massively, which you absolutely need to survive the onslaughts of enemies and some tougher enemies.
Because Joyful can be pretty hard.
Oh yeah.
And, in fact, like how Painful has, oh, do you want to go on pain mode? Joyful has a character that's just like, oh, do you want to go on easy mode? For like 100 mags, you want to go on easy mode. But I think it's more straightforward. It's kind of less open, and it's definitely much shorter. It's just like, go to each of these areas and kill the person at the end. And there are a couple different secrets you can get. And this was the only one in the series I didn't play with a guide, mostly because there wasn't a guide out. I used an achievement guide, just to see a few of the really hidden secrets, but that didn't actually like affect anything about the story or gameplay. So I went into all of this pretty blind, honestly.
It's interesting because it's structured more like an action game than an RPG. Like, it's directly just ripping off the entire structure of No More Heroes.
Yeah.
Like, there's literally a list of ranked people that you gotta go kill.
A giant list of names written in blood you gotta cross off.
Yep.
And as you do, the world gets a little more fucked up.
Just like in the first No More Heroes, and very unlike the second No More Heroes. The second No More Heroes, by the end of it, has Travis have sex with Sylvia finally, and he roars like a tiger. And that was stupid. The first No More Heroes, by the end of it, has Travis questioning the very concept of his own reality. And that's very much more in what this is going for. Just less Suda 51.
You don't really have to worry about making the world a worse place, because it's not like anyone can get past the toughest enemy in the game, Gary the Hot Soup.
He charges out a fucking truck at one point, and he's just like, "Soup's on, baby." He keeps appearing in like the Painful as one of the weaker enemies, but he keeps coming back. He just keeps coming back. It's just this weird looking guy doing a diving motion with a funny face, and he's like, "Soup's on." And then you fight him.
Yeah. Joyful obviously expands Buddy's character a bit, because you step in her shoes. It sheds some more light on her relationship with Brad, and it also sheds new light on characters like Buzzo and Rando.
It also explains why she doesn't want to be around Brad within the first minutes.
And it also explains who that person is with the trumpet doing the background music, who kind of stares at you if you see him at all in Painful.
Yeah, in Painful, there's just Weird Al Yankovic hanging out on a mountain somewhere playing music, and sometimes you'll get close to him and he'll just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Just stares at you and stops playing the background music.
Yeah,
and he's actually a character now.
I can't believe he was actually a character within. You can actually meet him in the prologue of Lisa the Painful if you just don't enter the house, instead go right one more time, and he's there in a suit. That's great. And with that, I think it's time for us to get into the spoilers.
Yeah.
Oof. I feel like there's so much territory that we should just try and, like... I'm just gonna try and run through as much of the spoilerific stuff as possible, just so that we don't have to explain it for the later impact in the game, and the gameplay and the decisions that Brad makes.
Yeah, so spoiler warnings from here on out, if you haven't already spoiled anything.
Brad is a martial artist type guy. That's the biggest spoiler of all. And two of his students were Buzzo, who turns out to have been Lisa's kind of boyfriend, and Rando, who's this kind of little meek kid who doesn't talk much. But Brad ends up even adopting him. Buzzo always hated Brad because he blamed Brad for the abuse that Lisa suffered because Buzzo is a piece of shit. But,
and Lisa kind of manipulated him too.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, so Buzzo Bernard was, of course, one of Brad's students, and you see him early on, and you can kind of pick up that's who it is. And then you see another really feeble, stuttery kid, and Brad's like, yeah, you can join karate, just, you don't have to pay. And Dusty becomes Dusty Armstrong, adopted by Brad, and Brad is, of course, Lisa's older brother, and Bernard is a friend of Lisa's, who, as you see, the joyful endings, like the different ones, shed a lot of light on everything. In the joyful ending I got, it's a conversation between Bernard, Buzzo, and Lisa as kids, where Lisa has Bernard cut off a small animal's paw while it's alive, and then she tells him, okay, good, now cut mine off, so that maybe Marty won't want me anymore. And the whole time she's doing it, she's saying, do you love me? If you do this for me, I'll love you. And that's the origin of Buzzo, and I think it's towards the end of Painful, you get a scene where Brad comes into the dojo and Dusty's face is all bloodied. And this is after you've seen Rando's face, and it's just a mangled mess. And Rando is Dusty, and so you see Dusty as a little boy, his face is all cut up and there's blood everywhere. And he says, he came in, he said this is because it's your fault. And it's implied that was Bernard Buzzo after Lisa had killed herself. And Brad just kind of walks out. So, and those are probably my favorite characters in the game. Rando and Buzzo.
Basically, Lisa manipulated Buzzo because in her grief and constant frustration, she wanted to use him in some way to either end her suffering or get revenge on the people who did her wrong. And she also might have hated him as well, and did not help his situation with what she was making him do. and Buzzo became infatuated with her and became obsessed with hating Brad once the apocalypse hit. And while Rando, after he was abandoned by Brad, after Brad kind of broke from those words, he ended up becoming a leader of a great army in the wasteland and tried to create peace throughout the different strong men who ended up ruling the land. At the same time, there's the reason that all of this, that entire White Flash incident happened. Oh yeah, I should mention, remember that one really talky guy you find early and painful? Nern, yes. Remember, he basically describes what the Flash was, except he keeps getting distracted by talk about his wife, and he starts increasingly hating her as time goes on, and being sad that he can't see her boobs anymore. But anyways, he gives a basic time frame and explains that some Flash happened and all the women in the world disappeared, and through flashbacks and epilogues and all that, we learned this is because of a man named Dr. Yato, who was working with the drug Joy to try and create some sort of super weapon for a military. But the military realized fairly early on that this was a bad idea after seeing what Joy mutants were like.
It turned people into mutants and basically just enhanced their internal desires and made them violent.
And that doesn't necessarily make for a good soldier, but Yato can control these Joy mutants through his music, and he wants to effectively just make a world where he is king, and sets all these events in motion. And then this is where things get crazy. Buzzo was working for him at the time, but he decides to just keep working for him so he can keep fucking around with Brad. But he also has a child with a woman that you can actually find her corpse in the abandoned lab if you're playing on pain mode. And that child ended up becoming Buddy, who he sent out into the wasteland to spark a war to increase the amount of Joy use and basically make the Joy addicts more agitated to make them transform faster and create his world. But by the end of Joyful, when he finally has to confront Buddy, who's just like covered in blood and just sick of all this shit, and she has no idea who he is, and he's just like, hey, I'm gonna kill you. And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
He's like, I didn't think this through.
So what I kind of, the theory I put together on like the Flash and everything was, I kind of figured like the apocalypse, the reason like there aren't any women, or there are women, but like in the shelter, or at least there's the woman who was Buddy's mother still there. What I kind of figured was Yato had distributed and gotten everyone hooked on Joy before all this happened, and basically it caused all these men to just kill the women around them. That was what I figured, that it, because it enhanced their internal desire, and with the idea of toxic masculinity and all these people talking about how much they hated their wife, I figured they took the Joy and they just killed all the women around them.
That's not exactly accurate. I should mention that you actually do see Brad taking a drug in one of his past visions, but it's not Joy, it's just painkillers.
Yeah, those are painkillers.
And so the implications I got from all the information we're given is, when Buzzo says there's a shelter, like mentioning there's other women, and the fact that one of the Joy mutants that Yato uses in Joyful appears to have originally been a woman, suggests that there really is a shelter of other women there, because Yato is not stupid enough to have women to, basically continue on the human race as necessary. And he didn't really start distributing Joy until after he caused this event where there would be a reason for so many people to get addicted to the drug in such large quantities. All the stuff you see in that town where the lab is the extent of his Joy use before, when he was just testing for the military. Everything after was him going off the rails. Because, like, if he distributed joy to the people before the Flash, the military would have stopped him, but now there is no military.
I don't really have a theory about the Dr. Yado side of things, because even though Buzzo is kind of the connecting piece, they're very separate stories. One of them is how Yado caused the apocalypse and wiped out women, and the other one is Brad and his trying his best to raise a girl, but his best is still really fucked up.
Yeah, the defining moment for Brad in Painful is when he confronts Marty again, who at this point is actually a changed person, is genuinely trying to help Buddy. It's not, he tells her not to, like, take joy, stuff like that. He's clearly a different person, and you're given the choice to spare him, but no matter what you pick, Brad loses his shit, partly because of the joy withdrawal, and you have to, and you're forced to kill Marty in order to progress in the game, and it is one of the most gut-wrenching sequences, because Buddy even, like, steps in front of him to stop you, and his last words are, "I've changed."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the game's big moment where it's like, hey, maybe this guy isn't the hero.
I thought that was a very kind of like, especially when Buddy gets involved and says, please stop, and when you have to continue the fight, even when Buddy is there, literally standing in front of him. But all I could really think of is, this guy did literally drive I don't know how old Lisa was, but he literally drove his daughter to suicide. That's...
It's not... The moment isn't saying that Marty is a good person now. The moment is saying is, does Brad really have the right to decide whether he lives or dies, and what does Buddy see in this person? Like, the entire game is all about moral ambiguity. Everyone is not just the bad things they've done or the good things they've done, except Yado, because he's just a cartoon villain put in here for the sake of stuff happening.
Yeah, that scene was... It goes through the problem of just talk. Just stop and tell Buddy, this is what this guy did. But I think it gets that around that in that, as you see later, Brad isn't actually in the right mind you think he is at that time. Like, not only... Like, I could accept him as just like, oh, he's just driven so by hate and trauma that he just can't stop right now. But as you see later on, no, he's already mutating into just this violent beast, joy monster.
Yeah, it also casts a lot of things you hear from his perspective in doubt, like when you see the sticky illusion where it's like a giant phallic monster, and the dialogue seems to be implying that he touched her, but then as you play on, Buddy mentions that he never did anything to her, he just told her the truth.
Yeah.
And there's like, he genuinely seems like the most heroic character in the game.
Yeah, I think it's enjoyable that it's made clear he never touched her, or none of them did. Whereas it really starts to sound like it in Painful. And not entirely just because of Brad, but because there's also a line that's like, the human race is saved, he says, I made sure of it, which makes it sound a lot like he means he had sex with her and impregnated her.
But what it really means is that he finally gave her agency.
Yeah, that's what it means. He just chose the incredibly poor wording at a key moment.
Honestly, I think you can make the argument that that's not even the exact wording he used, it's just what Brad heard because he was so far gone on joy at the time.
Yeah, maybe.
And also, that makes you question what some of the other characters say about her sometimes. Like, I'm not sure that one horrendous brother who, like, mentions that he wants a piece of Buddy actually said that at that point, because, like, Brad's really far gone by then. So I'm just, like, curious how much of it is true and how much of it is Brad projecting his own fears.
See, I can still believe it, and honestly I kind of prefer it that way, just because I feel like the point is more, oh, you've been traveling and especially with what happens at the end. I guess we can talk about it, when you get to the end and you have to fight the members of your party, and each of them has, depending on who you have, has their own unique thing to say in that moment. Like, some are like, no, I want a piece of the, like, no, I want to, I want my way with this girl, that's why I came along. I didn't come just to help you out. While others will just go, no, please, let's stop fighting. I think because you get to there, and not all of them are saying that, even though Brad's far enough gone at that point, that I think maybe you can trust what the others were saying. Just because, like, in my party, Jack was like, what do you mean? I wanted a piece of the girl. Or something like that. And Farty's like, you killed my brother. I'm gonna kill you. And then Shocklord's just like, guys, please, let's not fight. I don't want to fight. Like, I think the fact they all have, like, some are like that and some aren't, kind of lends credence to at least being able to trust what they were saying the whole time.
Yeah, it's a very mixed feeling where you're not sure what's accurate, or even if what's said is exactly what you think it means.
And I do like that all these people that you trusted and relied on this whole game, like, at the end, just turn around and are, like, actively working against you. Like, no, I was just helping you out so I could get a piece of the action.
And several of them honestly think that Brad is absolutely in the wrong, and even if they don't want to do it, they have to fight him.
Yeah.
And, like, some of them are sad about, but others are more resolute and admit that they have to do this for the good of the world.
I think I read that Terry, like, literally just cries on the floor.
He does. He even gets a different sprite.
Yeah, Shocklord doesn't cry on the floor, but the whole, like, when you're talking, he's like, no, he's like, on to everyone, he's like, guys, please, let's just not fight. And he cries the whole time, and I'm like, aw, my sweet boy.
I think,
the best.
I really like Joyful's ending because it it's the first time Buddy's, like, forced to really confront all that's done to her. The first thing you see in Joyful is a flashback where Brad teaches Buddy how to murder a man with a knife.
Yeah.
And that explains what that extra body was there in the beginning. Like, who killed that person with the knife? Oh, Buddy.
Yeah, that, like, opening scene sheds, like, an entirely new light on their relationship and Brad. Because, like, the opening montage is just of him taking care of her. And it's not, like, entirely happy, because there's a bit where she runs off and he goes back and gets her. And she's crying in her room. And honestly, I kind of wonder at that point if maybe he had hit her after that. But then it's like, oh, he makes up for it by building her a mask and letting her go out. But that sheds, like, a whole new, like, light on into what kind of father Brad was. I also love the detail that he hates being called dad. Like, that's one of my favorite details in the game.
A major running theme throughout the games is that nobody is exactly as they appear. Sorry. And, like, it even comes through with Joyful with all the people you have to kill, because, like, Rando will mention things about them, like what good they've done for the Wasteland, like how one Horrendous Brothers, who's apparently super strong, like, runs a trucking empire that brings supplies to everyone. There's an entire segment of Pacifist, and he explains how they managed to make a way of life like that in peace and so forth. And, like, none of them are outright villains. In fact, not many of them seem to want anything to do with Buddy. And there's also the one guy who's dying on the noose and then tells you that he's not dead yet and fight him, he's not a pussy.
Well, I really liked the beginning of Joyful, the bit where Brad is dragging a guy. The bit where Brad is dragging someone into the shack for Lisa to kill. There was a tiny part of me that it remembered how Austin Jorgensen, he doesn't want to sell Lisa the first because, you know, it's just an RPG Maker game. He's not particularly proud of it. And there's a part of me that wondered if maybe that happens at the beginning of Joyful as a way of him being like, maybe I wasn't clear that Brad really is quite a shit guy Maybe I wasn't clear, so I'm literally gonna start with him forcing Buddy to kill a man. Because while there is a bunch of morally ambiguous stuff in the first game, a lot of it is either because he's under the influence of joy, because he has a twisted sense of morality, and because of his upbringing. And some of the more emotional moments, especially the moments where it's like, oh, maybe Brad might be doing something morally ambiguous, it's the one time in the game when the balance between comedy and drama doesn't work. Because there's a balance between comedy and drama, even in like the music, of how some tracks are serious and some tracks
Like how
are
some tracks
crazy.
sound exactly like farts.
Yeah. There's a comedy in even the battle gameplay, in that you can have a fly puke on a guy and make him scared, but there's also serious bits, because Terry can be permanently killed at any moment. But the bits in the actual storyline, like, you mentioned that Brad, he comes to an island, he finds Buddy, she's staying with Marty, and Brad loses control and kills Marty, which is surely going to scar Buddy, if she isn't already scarred for life, even more. And that's very dramatic and very tense and very emotional. And then when Brad wakes up from his joy-induced haze, he goes outside and goes, oh, Buddy took the raft that I took here. I know, I'm going to sail on this fat guy. And then it's just this little thing of Brad just sitting on a fat guy who's sailing across the sea while it plays this tropical music.
I actually love
just
that moment.
Yeah.
I
found it really funny, but I kind of felt like, okay, I was really taking this seriously right up until then, and now it's gone.
I think it's good because you go through this like heightened emotional moment, like wow, and then it's just this moment of levity where you're still doing something shitty, like you're using the body of a man you murdered as a raft, and it's comedic. It's just really darkly comedic after a dark moment.
One thing that always makes me feel better about these games is seeing other people on the internet who I think have missed the point of them, because it just makes me feel smart and smug. But I did see somebody referring to, the scene where you have the bulldozer and you're driving through a construction zone. That's one of the stupidest and funniest moments in the game, and I saw somebody seriously going, this moment in particular really highlights how he's willing to, he's willing to drive over innocent people in order to get this girl. And I'm like, this is a boss fight where you fight a guy who gets 4 separate flashbacks about how he tries to drive a bulldozer, but it keeps ruining his life.
You know what the funny thing is? That pretentious observation is right.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this series. It's
right in a way which is like you're analysing funny bulldozer man.
But the thing is, he's also right.
Oh.
Like, the entire series is like this. Even when it's doing something stupid and comedic, it's kind of doing a subtle thing telling you, hey, this might be important. Or, hey, this person might be bad.
I still think
you just never know when it is.
I still think my favorite, like the funniest to me part in the whole game is when you're going through an area, and if you stop inside one of his houses, this guy's just he's just dancing, he's just raving with a little disco ball on his head, and he's just having a great time and raving, and you can't interact with him or do anything, and then you walk out and you go through the area, you have a boss fight, and you're walking back, and if you stop back in, the music's still going, the lights are still going, still raving, but he's hung himself. And you can go behind him and take his stash of magazines, and if you interact with the stereo, Brad just says, you should leave it on. That's what he would want. And that's my favorite.
And he has
any of the games.
And then in Joyful, he has a little cult.
He has a cult.
One of the bits is a really similar bit to that in Joyful that I didn't like that much.
The
one
no
of the
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one of the bits that really did, even though I knew that a lot of it was coming, one of the bits that did make me sad in Lisa the Painful is the wacky mini-boss squad, the Salvation Rangers, and they show up a few times and have some funny dialogue, and then you just find them late in the game and one of them is a Joy Mutant and he's just killed the others.
Yeah.
And it's... But then in Joyful, there's one of them who left the gang and survived, and you can talk to them with your mask off and they're just like a friendly guy. And then you come back near the end of the game and he's just hung himself.
Yeah,
and that was... I
also,
was just like...
And you can also pick up his helmet, but, I mean, you can't wear it and you can't give it to anyone and can't sell it.
But yeah, that was just a point where I was like, really? Because, like, with everything else I've seen in Lisa the Painful and Lisa the Joyful, it's not like this is going to make me more depressed. It's not like I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh wow, now this is the moment that really...
Also, which mask do you use in Joyful? Do you use Rando, Terry, or Joy?
Always Rando.
Always Rando.
Always Joy. Joy mask is so good. I'm surprised you didn't use the Terry mask, Dark.
I didn't want to because that would have sucked a lot of the seriousness out of it. Oh, I should also mention Joyful that if you talk to people without a mask, they will react to you very differently.
Yeah, I never risked it, except for the no friends achievement.
I think we should wrap up with the final boss battle of Joyful, because I think that's like the perfect sequence to explain all of the messages of this game, because it's just Buddy going through the memories of her adopted father and like all the bad and all the good, and how she's just violently reacting to all of it as she's coming down from a joyful high. And it's like genuinely hard to get through because you just don't want to hurt Brad at that point. Like, despite everything you know about him and all of the mistakes he's made, you know he's not like a genuinely evil person. He tried to do what he thought was right. He was just wrong. Mm-hmm. And now you're seeing all these different sides of him that Buddy's seen, and you just want these characters to have some form of peace. And that's all you can really get out of the last battle.
At the end of Painful, did you have Buddy hold him or not?
Yes, I had her hold him.
I did not.
At that point, despite everything, it's just like, I know how he got to this point, and I know all the reasons why, and it's just like, he deserves at least one hug. Just one hug. He's been through so much shit, and despite everything, like, he deserves at least one person just patting him on the back. Because I don't think he's ever had positive reinforcement from anyone, except his three friends, and by his perspective, they betrayed him. So, like, he just needs someone before he goes.
See, for me, it's not... I don't do it out of... like, when I'm in this situation in a game like this, I don't make my choices based on empathy, which isn't... It's not that that's the wrong way to play. I like to... For a game with this tone, I just go for the complete tragedy ending. Where even if it doesn't make a difference, I want to do what I think feels best for my storyline, and mine was just no. Like, after everything, he doesn't even get that.
For me, it was also partly what I thought Buddy would want to do, and I think, like, despite everything, I don't think she completely despised him.
Yeah, at that point I thought she maybe completely despised him, but Joyful does make it seem more like she cared more about him than I figured.
They were both complicated, violent messes.
Yeah.
I'm not
though, like, it's his kind of his fault. She's a violent mess.
I'm not too wild about there being two different endings in Joyful, because one of them is just bad. No, I'm not talking about the epilogues.
The endings. Sorry, the epilogues.
You can either have...
Yeah.
You can either either have Buddy take the last minute cure for joy that Buzzo tossed at her after he just had enough of this shit and killed Yato. Or you can have her not take it and become like the Joy Mutant Queen or some stupid bullshit no one cares about. But like that ending doesn't need to be there. That never needed to be there. There's no reason to have that in there. I mean, I understand the idea, but like putting that choice in the player's hands feels like it's robbing the ending of its power.
Yeah, cause I just can't see a reason why she wouldn't take the antidote.
Yeah.
I don't see why she'd still want to stay with Rando or Brad and become a Joy Mutant.
And God, that ending song is just like heart-wrenching.
And when that happens, you see her as an adult, and there's a baby with her, and you see Rando's grave, and she's using Yato's horn to kind of control Brad.
And she like has a kid.
Yeah.
It's like,
Who
yeah,
looks like a baby with an adult's head.
It's just like that's the best you can hope for her at this point. Just finding some form of peace.
Mm-hmm. I don't like where she becomes a Joy Mutant, but it is still kind of a weirdly nice image in one of the variations of it you can get, where she's a Joy Mutant but she's holding the baby. It's a weird but nice image, even if I don't like that ending. Now the epilogues.
Yeah, the epilogues are really reveal some last minute stuff. If I remember correctly, one goes into detail on what Yato did when he's talking to the woman who was Buddy's mother. And then there, of course, there was the one with Lisa talking to Buzzo. But the last
That's the one I got.
But the last one, Jesus.
Oh, that one completely like reframes Brad's guilt.
Yeah,
because it goes from he abandoned his sister to no, he, for whatever reason,
he was forced.
Even though he was forced and manipulated by Dad, he still participated in the abuse of his sister.
And he definitely can't wash his hands of that.
Yeah, and like I don't know if Buzzo knew that at all.
He might have, and I think that would have been why he really hated him.
Maybe, but wow, that completely like reframes Brad, and just so
to me that was just kind of like the Green Ranger thing again, though, in that it's the last line of the game, and it's like, hey, guess what? Everything's more depressing and fucked up than you thought it was. And I'm just like, I've told you I can't go any further in that direction. You've got maximum depression and fucked upness. It's like I'm playing Killer 7 and Actual Sunlight. I'm in the maximum of both of those directions.
I am not surprised at all this ended up being nearly as long as the Alan Wake episode.
Yeah. Well, this is 3 games.
But anyways, I think we should wrap up. And I want to say now, while I get my final thoughts out, I did a top 20 of some of my favorite games I played this year. And Mass Effect is only on there because I don't think I've played enough great games. Because I kind of hate it. Like, I like Mass Effect, the entire idea of Mass Effect is either, do you want to be nice fascist or racist fascist? But anyways, I'm looking at my list, and Lisa is in the top 5, no surprise, because it nearly got me to cry by the end of Joyful, and it absolutely earned a place on this list. It's actually the reason Stories Untold isn't in the top 5.
I genuinely don't know how popular this game is.
Not that popular. Like, it has a cult following, like there's a lot of fan games being made, but it ain't no Undertale. And on YouTube, it's just commonly known as, hey, this game's like Undertale. And it can, like, none of the leeches can latch onto it because it's not like fan fiction fodder or like game theory fodder where you can make Fox pretentious statements and seem like you're smart when you're actually a complete douche who gave the Pope a copy of Undertale, and then the Pope came out and said video games were the devil.
Yeah, the only attention I've ever really
hint
is Super Bunny Hop did a video on
an HR bomber guy.
Not on Lisa alone, but he did it on Lisa and Undertale together.
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah. He doesn't even focus on Lisa that much in it.
Now, Bomber Guy did do an entire 45-minute video on all 3 games, and I think it was useful for helping me cement my own thoughts on it. Though I disagree with him on a few things, I think he gets a lot of the broad strokes down right.
My closing thoughts, I feel bad because my closing thoughts are linked to Undertale. Because I was just going to say, the reason why I think people compare this to Undertale so much is there's 2 main reasons. The first one is that people are just the fucking worst. They're just so stupid, and it's like, oh, I can't describe this thing without putting it in terms of another thing. It's just... Which, to be fair, Lisa is fairly undescribable. So you just have to go, what's the last RPG I played?
And it's so annoying because Lisa came first.
Yeah.
They're both the Earthbound likes. They're different games, but they both obviously take tonal and sometimes aesthetic cues from Earthbound, and they came out within a year of each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the second reason that, well, at least this is the reason why I begrudgingly would kind of link them together, is that Undertale is directly the opposite of Lisa.
Yeah.
And I don't mean in the sense that Ratchet and Clank is the opposite of Cooking Mama, because they're both really different. I mean, Undertale is a game where you can befriend literally everyone, and there's one character in the game who's completely evil, but if you play the game well, that character literally never comes into existence. It's just a happy game where you can succeed at everything with friendship.
Unless you play it like a normal video game nerd who's completes the first 2 storylines. Hey, I want to know everything about this game. I should do the last one. Hey, I understand this thematically, but it's not fun. This is bad. This is bad. I understand it thematically, but it's not fun. I killed everyone and it wasn't fun. I fucking hate YouTube.
Yeah, whereas Lisa is a game where I'm just going to see how many times I've put the word fuck in this sentence. Because it's basically just, Lisa is a game where you're fucked, you start off fucked, but then it turns out you were even more fucked than you thought you were fucked. And you can never not be fucked, and then in turn you end up just fucking everything else up as well. So, they're wonderful game.
They're tonal opposites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though they share the kind of quirky nature and funny writing.
If Undertale is about the importance of our choices, this is more about the importance of how we're affected by things out of our control. So basically, you're playing this game as Chara. Fight me.
I like how this started off with, I don't like how this game gets compared to Undertale, and now we're comparing Undertale.
There's the police in the background coming to get us for it.
Yeah.
Go away, game theory guy. You don't own Undertale.
Hey, Lucas is in this game. He dies.
And he sans Undertale. I've never seen a Game Theory video about Undertale or any Game Theory video ever after a certain amount because I realize he's a complete shit, but I'm guessing his theory was that Lucas is sans Undertale.
Pat just kicks the door down and goes, "You're under arrest, but hey, that's just a theory."
Oh wait, hang on, there's a new FNAF game. I gotta go make a lot of money saying nothing. I gotta make a lot of money stealing things I read on TV tropes. So yeah, Lisa.
It's really depressing. Go check it out.
Yeah, my closing thoughts are, don't play this game without a walkthrough.
You can go ahead and skip the first, but you absolutely need to play the other two. Just be warned, heavy shit goes on in this game, in these games.
Read up on the first, and it has some nice visual direction in it that clearly influences the rest of the games.
The Mansion of Farts.
And like these are really thought-provoking and genuinely funny games, but they're punishing, and if you don't want to deal with constant frustration and only want to deal with some frustration, then like use a walkthrough. Except for Joyful, I think you can get through Joyful fine without a walkthrough.
Yeah, Joyful is like if an action game was turned into an RPG.
Yeah, as long as you just know some of the systems going in, like use Joy all the time, then you'd be fine with Joyful. And I had a good time playing it sort of blind, but it's a good series.
Yeah, I pretty much parrot those thoughts.
Yep.
It's definitely worth your time if you enjoy dark humor and something kind of thought-provoking.
And with that, I think it's time for us to explain our next episode. Normally, I would be doing a special where we play a series of small games, but this time we're going to do But before we do that, I want to do a year-end review.
2017. We could be dead.
Time for me to talk about the year.
What we're going to do is talk about the favorite games we played this year, not came out this year, but that we played this year. Some of the worst games we played this year, and a few interesting ones that we think deserve mention. And we're just going to do it loose, and that will be the next episode.
Woo.
Oh, and before we go, Elmo, I feel like I should tell you this. Remember that Mansion of Farts joke I made?
Oh, no.
That was a South Park joke.
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't laugh.
You laughed. You laughed at a South Park joke.
It was a pity laugh. I was like, I don't know what he's saying, but, haha, good one.
And anyways, that's it for now. We'll see you next time. And Elmo laughed at a South Park joke.
Fuck South Park.